take it. It'll be okay.
Okay. Yeah. So. Okay.
Okay. I can help with. I'm going to miss.
I was looking for my card.
I'm not Mrs. You're not Mrs. I am a Mrs. I said I'm Mrs. Sorry.
Do you need one?
I can't believe I forgot my card.
Whatever you're comfortable with. Mrs. is fine.
Okay.
But I'll answer to any of it.
I answer to a lot of words. I always say that.
You're like, hey, you. I'll be like, all right, that's me. Yes. See if that works.
Yes, thank you.
If not, here's a picture.
God, I had thoughts earlier. What's the worst that could
Well,
happen?
just because I switched out of my regular, like, I go have like a gross pins because registered.
That was like,
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, when I registered people vote, I don't know that, and I can bring up stuff.
the fear of the unknown. So whenever I look at things like that, like why they are really not going to do something, and if it comes down to fear of the unknown, I'm scared. Me, you, if I say something to somebody, okay, it's going to happen anyway. You know, me, you, that's, you know, these are all those little self-things I tell myself.
I was more.
I mean, I feel like I do, or, you know,
the questions. I excused myself because I was a current board member.
I mean, you're going to offend somebody. Well, not everybody's going to like that. You know, that's okay. Those aren't your people.
That's not your house.
Right, like, okay. But I'm not going to change me so you like me.
Okay. And then we are going to do working questions. We have 60 seconds to respond. I know that's not a lot of time. Yeah, that's okay. We're going to shoot for about 7:15 to wrap up, and then we'll do the meet and greet, okay? And you'll be able to have a 30-second and I'll announce it.
Sounds great. Thank you, Carly.
So, we'll have 60 seconds.
I don't, see, that's hard, because I have to do that. And
Oh,
what we try
thank you.
to do is look for keywords and questions. And then we hurry up, because people are really mad when their questions. So, I often think that maybe they should make
So each candidate to answer the same question. So no one will say like question 4.
that way you can tell what's on somebody's mind, you know?
But we don't have to answer the question if we don't want to, right? Okay. 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 I was just curious. Okay. Okay.
I had to be the timer for the, which one was the commissioners forum.
How did that go?
It went fine, but I mean, you know, it cracked me up because they did not, so many people run over almost every time, or at least use all the
So
time.
in our
I only had to,
is that rule statewide or
the 30 seconds. They didn't have to.
Thank you.
I'd have been a slate of women, maybe. Well, there's all men. All men, and
Oh, that is true.
I mean, and I'm like,
I didn't even pay attention
everybody
to
goes,
that.
well, that's going to be rough. You have to tell one of them to stop.
But there's procedures for it.
Do that, Peggy. Don't be that person.
Nobody never calls me.
Yeah, they will.
Who it was, but I remember I
Carrie's phone
raised
was
that.
going off during the board meeting on Monday night.
Was because Robbie had surgery,
Did?
and so they needed somebody.
I'm just. I don't think so.
Good evening. Good evening. We have 6 o'clock. We have a packed house tonight. That is great. Before we officially get started, everyone please turn off your cell phones or silence them. I'll do the same, okay? Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Vigo County's School Board Candidate Forum. We'd like to first begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please rise.
Where is it? Behind us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters we would like to thank our co-sponsor of these forums. This is our third in our three-part series. Those include the Greater Terre Haute Branch of the NAACP, the Terre Haute Tribune Star, the Terre Haute Wabash Valley Alumnae Chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., and the Vigo County Public Library. We'd like to especially thank the folks in the back here at the library, Katie, and those who have worked to not only live stream this, but also save it for perpetuity. So thank you. Thank you for the work. I am Carly Schmidt, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Vigo County, and I'm also associate professor of political science at Indiana State. And I will again be moderator for tonight. We are pleased to host these forums, and early voting is about to begin. We hope that this forum will help inform your vote choice. On the ballot, we have two sets of voting that's going to take place. All voters in Vigo County may vote for two candidates in the District 1 and 2 race, and all voters may vote for one candidate in the District 3 race. And we have all the candidates who will be on the ballot here for school board. After this evening, we encourage you to use our vote411.org voter information site to learn more about these candidates and all of the candidates that you will see on the ballot. So tonight we're going to proceed as follows. We're going to have our question and answer portion of the forum run until about 7:15, 7:20. Then after that, the audience will be able to meet the candidates until about 7:45. Each candidate is going to kick off the forum with a 1-minute introduction. Then we'll open it up to the question and answer. Audience members have submitted a lot of questions already, and you can continue to do so. Please be sure you format your questions so that they are inclusive to all the candidates and not a set of candidates in particular. So each candidate will respond to each question, and they'll have about 60 seconds to do that, and we'll conclude with the candidates giving a 30-second concluding remark component. We have Leah Myers up front. She is our timekeeper for tonight. She will make sure we stay on top of our time. We've got a lot to get through, a lot of different issues in these questions. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Christ for introductory comments.
Okay, is this on? Yes, it is. Okay, typically I don't need a microphone. Well, welcome. My name is Christina Christ, and I am running in District 1 for one of the seats that are available. I have been a long-time community member. I have served the community in the past 11 years as an executive director of a local nonprofit. And one of the things that I have been doing is ensuring that we get mental health out there, breaking the stigma, bringing it to the forefront of people's mind, and that is my number one why.
Ms. Joyner?
Hello, my name is Peggy Joyner. I am a lifelong resident of Terre Haute. I have graduated 2 kids out of the Vigo County School Corporation. I have 2 kids currently attending my Vigo County School. I'm a member of the Terre Haute 10, and I'm also the active privacy officer at Hamilton Center. And being a member of the Terre Haute 10 is actually how I got here, addressing the board. I wanted to be on the other side so that I could represent the 20% of non-white residents, children in the corporation, and to provide a voice for those who feel as if they have none. Thank you.
Mrs. Lohr?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Lohr. I am running for a seat in District 1 for the school board. I currently serve as the president of the school board. I've been for 2 years, and this is the end of my first term. It's been an honor and a privilege to help bring in one of the most competent and excellent superintendents I think we've ever seen in Vigo County, and I'm very passionate about supporting that vision that he has for our schools. I have 2 children in the school corporation, one in the 2nd grade and one in high school. My husband is a teacher in the school corporation. I personally work full-time in education and workforce policy, serving as Senior Director of Government Relations for a STEM education group called Project Lead the Way. So I feel I still have value to add to the board, and look forward to your questions tonight.
Ms. Scott.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so pleased to see such a nice crowd tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and I know I'm familiar to a lot of you. You'll remember that I have served on the board in the past, and I've been a candidate before also. I'm running again because of many of the issues that I ran on the first time. I still feel like we have a really big gap between our community and our board. Our communication needs to be improved, and I remember so well how that feels as a mother of 5, having sent my kids all the way through Vigo County schools, having gone through myself. We know that you need to be able to cross over as a board member and at some time go back and put your parent hat on.
Mrs. Killian.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Killian, and I am running for the 1 seat in District 3. I am actually a current school board member serving my 4th year in my first term. My day job, I work at the Terre Haute Children's Museum as a community engagement manager, and I also serve on our Indiana School Boards Association Region 7 director, so I help bring Vigo County School Corporation to a seat at the table at the state level. I am a proud mom of 2 students that are products of the Vigo County School Corporation. My oldest is a junior at Purdue. My youngest is a senior at Terre Haute North. I am passionate about kids first always. I've worked in the school corporation, a PTO mom, and now serving as a school board member to make sure our community engages with us and always puts kids first as we move forward. I'm all about looking forward to the future and continuing on the progress we have made as a corporation. Thank you.
Mr. Lee.
I want to thank the sponsors and Carly and all of you for coming tonight. It's great to see such a great crowd. I am Mark Lee. I taught in the Vigo County School Corporation for 43 years and coached for 42 years. I am married to the former Lisa Fanning Lee for 48 years. We raised 3 sons, and they have chosen to stay in Terre Haute. I have grandchildren ranging in age from 19, one who just graduated from North and is now at Indiana University, all the way down to 3-year-old in preschool. So I will bring experience to this board. I served as the Vigo County Teachers Association president for 23 years. I've been on the ISTA executive board. I know a lot about the school corporation for being so involved in it for so long. So I can promise you I bring transparency, and I would answer questions that are asked of me in an open and honest way. So again, I think I would bring the most experience that you've seen in a long time on the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first substantive question comes from the League of Women Voters of Vigo County. It's a big one. All right, there's a little bit of a setup. During the 2023 Indiana legislative session, House Bill 1447 was passed. It includes making it possible for school librarians to face level 6 felony charges, punishable by up to 2.5 years in jail and $10,000 in fines. This new law went into effect in 2024 and will allow parents and community members to request the banning of certain school library books they deem offensive. As a school board member, how would you balance compliance with this new law while allowing school librarians and teachers to continue to provide leadership in making sure students have access to the books they need that support the curriculum, as well as assisting in developing their individual personal growth of the students? And so, Ms. Joyner, you are up.
Well, if it's a state law, of course, we have to abide by it. I personally do not believe in banning books. I believe books should be age appropriate, but as far as banning them, especially as long as the internet is available to kids, banning the book doesn't make it any less real. Doesn't make whatever you're trying to withhold false. So, but at the end of the day, I would have to follow state law.
Mrs. Lohr?
So we already have a policy in place for how parents can express concerns over any titles that we have in our school libraries, and we also have a process in place for our librarians to make sure that they're following the curriculum standards that are in place when they make those selections. We, of course, are following state law, and we are meeting in our policy committee, which is a public committee. You all are welcome to come to those, to discuss how we would kind of keep that in rotation. So if you have a parent who comes in and says, I would prefer this book not to be there, we would put that in every 4 years that's going to be rotated out, or actually what we discussed was putting it on the same timeline as our curriculum vetting process, which is 6 or 7 years.
Ms. Scott?
Well, it's hard for me to believe that we're discussing book banning in 2024, but having said that, I'll try to answer this question. We rely on our media specialists. They do a fabulous job, and in many conversations with them, this topic does come up. Of course, like Peggy said, we would uphold the law, but we need to keep the communication open. Everybody wants age-appropriate books, and before, when we had parents come to us and say, this book was in your library, they worked with the media specialist, and oftentimes we found the book was not anywhere to be found. So I think the state does have this law, but they give the choice to the actual media specialist, and they themselves often pick out the books. They have the best interest of our kids at heart when they do that.
Mrs. Killian?
So during the interview process for Dr. Hemsel, when the board was interviewing him, one of the things that stood out to me most was how involved he is in our state legislature. One of the things he does pay attention to is the laws coming down from our state that will affect our policy as a corporation. So he was ahead of the game, and as Amy had stated, the policy committee, which she and I both do serve on as a public committee that you are invited to attend at any time, this book banning policy was already on the agenda for us to discuss and make sure we are following state law. There is a process in how you can challenge a book title. We make sure we go through that it is a fair process. The challenger must have read the title and provide that information on where that situation in that book that they don't agree with, and then there is a process to be vetted. I believe in our policy. I think it's robust, and again, our superintendent is on it with our state legislature and making sure we abide by state law.
Mr. Lee?
Again, as has been stated, I think our media specialists do an excellent job. I think that it would be impractical for the state to try to prosecute a media specialist who has supposedly violated the law. I think you're not going to see that happen, but I would hope if that would happen in our corporation, that our administration and the Teachers Association would go all out to defend that media specialist from such a foolish law. So again, I don't see it happening. Just because something's on the books doesn't mean it's going to be enforced. This was just, again, a Republican ploy to make public education have to go through some more hoops again.
Ms. Christ?
As a board member, I would make sure that the laws were followed correct. And I can say that I would not be for banning books. And I would leave it up. I mean, our superintendent sees over those things. We hire our superintendent for reasons, and we govern that. So for that, I would make sure that the laws were followed, and I would not be for banning books.
Okay. Our next question is from our co-sponsors, the Greater Terre Haute Branch of the NAACP. Mrs. Laura will be kicking off this question. The school corporation is taking steps to lessen its teacher shortage and to realize overall school improvement. As a member of the school board, what would your position be on ensuring greater diversity and equity among teachers and administrators in the Vigo County schools, including regular diversity training for all staff? And how would you increase the number of minority teachers in the school corporation?
Thank you for this question. Well, first of all, teacher shortage is not unique to Vigo County. It's a nationwide issue. We hear about it everywhere we go, especially with my perspective being in many states for my work. We want to ensure that we are talking to students when they're young so they see themselves in the classroom, and that includes all of our students. I think it's important for us to have ISU in Title I schools in particular so that they can talk to them about what a teaching pathway would look like. We also have a lot of programs and grants. We have brought back Dr. Goler, who has been helping us with our teacher pathway students getting Grow Your Own in that capacity. And as far as the training is concerned, we do have special attention given to that. I think what the board wants is to see pro-human, everyone welcome policies put in place and continuing to focus on that and give everyone the attention that they need to feel that they have a home in our school corporation.
Ms. Scott,
How much time?
60 seconds.
1 minute, okay, well, this topic could have its own forum. We'll try to see what we can do with a minute. It's really two parts. We need more diversity. We've known this for quite some time. We don't have the applicants. If we did, we may be able to rectify that. But I think we need to throw a larger net. I think we need to be going to historical black colleges and trying to sway some of these bright young people to come to Terre Haute. And at all time, of course, we want to practice diversity with all of our kids. And I know there are people making great efforts. When I visit classrooms, when I talk to elementary school teachers, they are doing everything they can to make everybody feel welcome. But we still have a problem. There's still a lot of work to do.
Okay, Mrs. Killian.
Thank you for this question, and my mind instantly went to the community engagement sessions that engaged our community and brought them in with the Terre Haute 10, and I know Ms. Joyner has been a component of that as well and a supporter. And we did hear a briefing from that as a board to hear some of the concerns our community has, and one of them was our lack of diversity in our teaching. I will share that we had one diverse individual graduate from ISU in the teaching profession, and Vigo County School Corporation did hire that individual. So we're proud of that work. We're going to continue that work. On the other side is we did raise our starting teacher salary this year. We were ranked at 46 out of 47 in neighboring corporations within 60 miles of driving. That's unacceptable. Since the changes of raising that base salary for a starting teacher, we are now attractive, ranked 11th, and we are bringing people from California and New York wanting to come here and work and signing that contract to be a Vigo County School Corporation teacher, and we must continue that work to move forward.
Mr. Lee.
Well, certainly, the problem with attracting minority teachers has existed for a long time. I know Mr. Cox, the Human Resources Director, has made efforts in trying to improve that. At the same time, I don't really know the answer, so I can't tell you what it is. I think maybe before Mr. McClendon leaves, maybe we should ask him why he chose not to live in the community and live in Indianapolis instead of here, because, again, we have to figure out why people don't want to apply here. Now, you can raise the beginning teacher salary, as Ms. Killian said, but again, then we left a lot of people out. We'd raised the beginning teacher salary just 4 years ago, and that didn't help a lot. So that's not going to attract that many minority people. There has to be something in the community to attract them, not just the school corporation. And again, we've tried, but it's just not many minorities have applied to for teaching positions here. So we obviously need to do better in trying to attract them, but that's just, again, I don't have the answer for that.
Ms. Christ?
I do believe that we do need to have more attraction. I believe that we do need to have more training. I believe that the salaries need to go up. We need to make it to where people want to either stay and go to college here and invest in our community, or individuals that have husbands or wives that are trying to move into our community for other positions that are teachers, which we have a lot of that. And we have individuals that are seeking employment outside of this corporation. And so we need to figure out, I don't know what the coverall answer is for that, but I do think that we need to invest in time, and we need to ask individuals of minority what they think and what they would bring, and if they have ideas for us for that.
Ms. Joyner?
So I would continue to do as I've already done, and that is apply pressure to the board and to the administration. Like Ms. Killian said, I was a part of community forums where education was one of the platforms, and one of the things highlighted was that we need a more diverse staff in our schools. When we presented this information to the school board and superintendent, and we suggested that maybe you provide like incentives, and we were told that they're not able to do that. So we're back to the drawing board on that, and we need help from our city, first of all, to make Terre Haute a more enticing place to come for someone who is a minority.
Okay, thank you. Our last sponsor question is from the Terre Haute Wabash Valley Alumni Chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. And Ms. Scott, this will be yours. How would you use your emotional intelligence and equity-mindedness as a school board member?
Well, I would use it as a school board member as I use it as a citizen. It's important to me. I've always felt like, we can do as much as we can do, but then it always comes down to individual people being kind, outreaching, seeing a problem, trying to come up with a solution. Those are all things that I've always done and I would continue to do. And part of what has been said about the community meetings, the reason earlier I said we don't throw a wide enough net is because several of our younger people told us we have traditional black colleges within a couple hours of us. We have St. Louis. We have other places that we really need to make an effort. If you want a diverse population in our little town here in the Midwest, it just won't happen organically. We have to put in the effort. I certainly would do that as elected member.
Mrs. Killian?
I think with my emotional intelligence and equity-mindedness, it would come down to it's kids first. I have a son who struggles with anxiety and depression, and when I think of what's best for him, I am also thinking about what's best for my nieces and nephews, for my friends' students, for my teacher friends, and then their families. We are human first, always, and I think with the school corporation, to keep that in mind, it's really easy to dehumanize a school board member or a public official, as we have seen through COVID and through other situations on a national level. It has penetrated here at a local level. I think we need to keep in mind that people that put their name on this ballot to serve in this role are here for the right reasons most of the time. But we are all human, and we all have a kindness factor that we have to keep in mind as we move forward. And when it all comes down to it, no matter our agenda, it's about serving our kids first, and we need to keep that in mind.
Mr. Lee?
I think I would just bring common sense and respect for everyone. I think that's what I would bring. I'm not sure I really understood the question. So,
Would you like it repeated?
yes.
How would you use your emotional intelligence and equity-mindedness as a school board member?
I think I'll just repeat what I said. I think I would bring common sense and a respect for all individuals. I think I was an excellent classroom teacher, and I think that's a trait that will carry over to the board. So.
Ms. Christ.
When I think of emotional intelligence, being a school board member, you have to think of as a whole, right? Not as, what does Christina Christ want, right? It's not about what I want, it's about a collective whole and everybody together. So as a board member, that's what I would bring. I would bring inclusivity in every aspect that I could, and try to the best of my ability. I'm a human, right? I have emotions, I have feelings, but I can tell you that I would have the best interest of everybody in mind.
Ms. Joyner?
So emotional intelligence is something that it doesn't come easy, but we have to internalize, because at the end of the day, we're all here for the benefit of kids. Equal-mindedness, I would have to say, diversity is a fact. Inclusion is a choice. So if we just all make a choice to learn one another, get along with one another, whether you believe this world is round or flat, we have to coexist here all together and try to understand our differences. And once you do that, you begin to build better communities.
Mrs. Lohr?
So a school board member has 3 jobs. We hire, fire, and manage the superintendent, we oversee the finances, and we oversee the policy. And if you're going to express your emotional intelligence and equity-mindedness, it has to be through those factors. There's also a 4th job, and that is to be accountable to the community. And so listening to every parent, to every concern, with the same mindset of, I believe you. When you tell me you're afraid for your child, or you're upset, or you haven't been treated fairly, and to carry that to the superintendent, because that is the correct role of the board member, not to be involved in the day-to-day management, but to work through the superintendent and to set policies that make sure that every student and every teacher has the resources they need to succeed.
Okay, thank you. We have a number of questions asking about the priorities of our candidates, so I'll ask the most simple one. If you could make one important change to the Vigo County School Corporation, what would it be? Mrs. Killian?
I think the most important change I would make is to bring our community along to where they are attending our meetings on a regular basis and understanding the roles of a school board member and the power that lies within the board, which is not on an individual basis, but it is collectively as the role of 7. When we have votes, we all come to it as from a different perspective, but when that vote does happen, that we all support the will of the board to move forward. I also want the community to understand and come along with us that we should not have, in my opinion, an adversarial role with our superintendent. It should be a collaborative role. We hire a superintendent to govern the day-to-day jobs of the corporation, and as a board, we hold that person accountable. I want to see a collaboration between the board and this community and our superintendent for the most positive outcomes for our students, our teachers, and then our community members and taxpayers. That is the most important thing. I would like to see more community engagement. Please come to a board meeting. Please reach out to a board member. We so appreciate any type of communication we can have with you at any time. Mr. Lee?
I think if I could live in a fantasy world, I would have had 3 new high schools built. That's what I would put the emphasis on. Again, we are kind of repeating deja vu with what we've done under Superintendent Hayworth. We had to have a facility study, then we had to have a demographic study, then we had to have community meetings, we had to have a strategic plan that went through 2025, and then we had the referendum fail dramatically on May 3rd, where 63% of our voters chose not to finance the 3 schools that we need. Now we have the same thing going on with the new superintendent. He has to have another facility study. He had to have a demographic study. That facility study won't be ready until the spring of 2025. He's been here almost 2 years and really hasn't addressed the high school issues at all. And so again, we're putting it off. So that's what I would have done.
Ms. Christ?
So the number one thing that I would change is the relationship between the community and the school board. Time and time again, that's what I hear when I'm out here. Transparency, there's no trust between the community and the school board. And that would be my number one change, is to build that trust, get that transparency, having the community see the transparency. Myself, attending some of the board meetings and some of the policy and procedures and all of those type of meetings, all of that stuff is open to the public, right? But not everybody can make it to those meetings, right? And at the times and things like that. So, I would just wish that the relationship between the community and the school board was greater, and that would be a goal of mine.
Ms. Joyner?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
If you could make one improvement to the Vigo County School Corporation, what would it be?
Would definitely be transparency. I would also like to have the board meet in town. Nothing says I don't want to really be accountable to the community in moving the building in West Terre Haute and reducing the limit to speak and have public comments to 3 minutes. So I would like better community engagement with the board, and that way we could get some things resolved and parents would come to the meetings.
Okay. Mrs. Lohr?
I would say building relationships and trust back with our teacher population is the number one thing that I would do. When the referendum did not pass, I think what was most striking to me as I looked at that and tried to learn from it and hear what the community was trying to tell us was that our teachers were not with us. The teachers did not vote for that. They were the ones who were in the buildings more than anyone else, longer term than even the students, and they were not supportive. And that was one of the reasons why Dr. Himsel had my vote as our new superintendent, because I think he has an intrinsic understanding of how to build that trust back. He's been in the buildings. I've had feedback from countless teachers thanking us for bringing someone in who is there, not just to look over their shoulder and say something's wrong, but to build relationships and to say, hey, how are your kids doing today? How's your family? I heard your mom was in the hospital, that sort of thing. Because if we don't have our teachers as our champions, we're never really going to move forward, and I think that has to be central.
Ms. Scott?
Well, there isn't just one thing. I mean, there's so many things that are equal to each other. But I can tell you all the time that I spent as a PTO mom, I saw a lot of individual things that would be number one for one building would be different for another building. One thing that stood out to me during the closing of our elementary schools, in particular closing Meadows Elementary, that I was adamantly against, was so many teachers who spoke to us about leveling enrollment and how we had, Lost Creek had 700 children, but we said we were closing Meadows because it had 200 children. People talked to architects, which we often did because we had proposals for new buildings. They talked to us about enrollment size and how it affects a building, how many students a building was built for. So, not to make a pun, but we really do need to start from the ground up.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is about budget. What are your thoughts on the recent proposed budget? And as a school board member, where would you look to make cuts, if any? Mr. Lee?
Well, the new proposed budget is $172 million for 2025. So cuts, I think have already been tried by Dr. Hayworth. He promised $4 million in cuts and was going to close buildings. We didn't close any buildings. I don't think we came close to $4 million in savings. So What we need to do is reinvest in maintenance, in custodians. Our schools are dirty. Our outsides are embarrassments oftentimes. Just recently, in the last 7 weeks, because I've been helping coach St. Pat's tennis team, I visited 22 middle school tennis courts. They probably have not been addressed in at least 4 years, and I know numerous work orders have been put in. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to have to be poured in just to improve those tennis courts that have been let go because of lack of maintenance. So again, I think that's the main issue. We need to reinvest from the bottom instead of at the top. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Christ?
Could you please repeat the question?
What are your thoughts on the proposed budget? And as a school board member, where would you look to make budget cuts, if any?
Okay. So I wasn't there when the budget was made. I also wasn't there when to see all of the finances come in and be there for the decisions on how things were done. So I wouldn't have any control over doing that right away. But what I can say is that I would get in there and get on the finance committee and understand why some of the decisions were made that were made. And going forward, I know that they have been trying to make cuts all over, right? And we're behind. So I don't know that we can do any more cutting right now. Maybe we can do some rearranging. I'm not exactly sure right now what those would be. But once again, getting in there on the finance committee and understanding a little bit more.
Okay, Ms. Joyner?
So I am a kinetic learner, so I have to put my hands on it. So I can't really speak to budget cuts, but maybe I can speak a little to mindful and responsible spending. I speak to teachers. Some of them are on food stamps, and it was a little disheartening when they saw the superintendent receive a $10,000 bonus check. So I would encourage responsible spending.
Mrs. Lohr?
So the $10,000 that Dr. Hemsel received was contractually obligated if he met a review process that met or exceeded expectations. He did that after all 7 board members did his review. It was not a bonus that would have been a $10,000 pay cut if he didn't meet that. So we vetted that thoroughly with the community before that went through. Our budget has been steady year over year. It advertises a little bit high so that the Department of Local Government and Finance can cut that back as they do every single year. We have done ongoing work to reduce costs with rolling maintenance with our school buses and how we address when we have to purchase those. But I think ultimately what we have to do with our budget is think outside the box and engage with the other taxing units of local government in Vigo County so that what we're doing with the schools is not happening in a silo. Our county, our city, our mayor, those things have to be happening like clockwork together.
Okay, Ms. Scott?
I was at the meeting last night, and I know, as Mrs. Lohr said, they do advertise high. It does end up working out. I would encourage all of you, you can get a copy of the budget. The book might be this thick, but it will open your eyes to how expensive it is to run a school corporation. And we spend an exorbitant amount of the money on funds. And just think of that. And we know that it's not a good salary. Some would even say it's not even an adequate salary. And I agree with Mark. I don't know where we cut, but we need to take care of what we have. And other funding sources should be explored. And that would be on all of us because the community was very unhappy about seeing their taxes raised. But whenever we suggested other ways to raise money, the people fell silent.
Okay, Mrs. Killian?
So first, again, I'd just like to encourage you at any time to come to any board meetings. We are actually in the budget adoption process right now. We had a school board meeting last night, and there was not one single public comment. This goes back to I would like our community to engage with us more. We do have a large budget. It is advertised high, but we're also the 11th largest school corporation in our state. We have we are one of limited, like 6 full county corporations. We have a lot of needs. We're both urban and rural. So to me, to be the 11th largest school corporation in our state, we have a large budget and we have to pay so accordingly. We have an amazing CFO and her team. I mean, she is down to the penny. I have served on the finance committee for my 4th year now. It is very transparent. You can look at everything we spend and she knows every fund it comes out of. We also have an amazing grant writing team at our corporation and they are looking for things to supplement and pay. Ms. Scott had mentioned things cost a lot. We just had presented, we spent over $65,000 just in fire extinguishers alone.
Okay, thank you. What are your thoughts on school vouchers and how this state-level law impacts our school district? Ms. Christ?
I believe that it takes money away from our school corporation. I'm not super familiar with all of it, but my first thoughts are that it would take some of our funding away.
Ms. Joyner?
So I support a parent's right to choose their child's educational outcome. However, choice and voucher schools do subtract from our budget and our enrollment. But at the end of the day, if public schools can get it together, they would not be relevant.
Mrs. Lohr?
So vouchers are here to stay in the state of Indiana. I don't really think any of us can argue that point. Our job as a public school corporation is to be competitive in that environment. How do we do that? We want to keep students here. That means that we have to focus on our facilities. We've invested $30 million in our facilities over the last 2 years. That's more than the corporation has put in since 2004. And we have to make sure that we are attracting high-quality teachers. Teachers are the #1 indicator for student outcomes that is school-based. So how are we doing that? We're attracting and trying to keep teachers by addressing teacher pay. And we know there is a lost generation in the middle. We have been doing triage on our teacher pay scale. We had people bleeding out on the ends, and now we're setting the broken limbs, and that's coming next. And that is how we are going to address vouchers and school choice while putting students first. We're gonna do what we can to be the first choice.
Ms. Scott?
Well, vouchers have been a hot button issue for quite a while. And it may not be up to the 7 school board members or any school board members in any town, because that happens in Indianapolis. And I would encourage all of you to talk to your state legislature about that, because it is millions of dollars that are taken away from the public schools. And all of us are affected by what goes on, whether we have kids in school or not. Over 95% of Hoosier children go to public schools. We should be given those funds at the highest rate. And also, it is always hard when you look at the guidelines. The public schools have to operate at a higher guideline, and that isn't fair. If the state is going to give money to other schools, then they need to be on the same level playing field with everybody else. Number one thing that has been brought up is attendance. Many times these children are not in school.
Mrs. Killian?
I agree with Mrs. Lohr. Public vouchers, school vouchers are here to stay. Serving on the ISBA Board of Directors, it is a priority for school vouchers, but not to have them go away because they're not going anywhere. It's more to address the funding sources and how to make it most equitable for public education, for voucher systems to be held to the same standards as public education. I am one that would never stand in the way of you choosing to do what's best for your children and your family. I have friends that homeschool students as well. That is your choice to do that. But what I will say is public education is still chosen over 90% in our state. It is still the first choice, and we're here to make that work. And as board members, we're going to work to make sure we understand why students are leaving. I think that is where we can really attack at the local level, is have a robust system of why students are leaving, why they may come back. Is there something we could do differently? And so that involves like an exit program there as well, to gain that information at our administrative level to report that back to the superintendent and board.
Mr. Lee.
Let's be honest, beginning with Mitch Daniels, the whole purpose of creating charter schools and vouchers was to destroy the public school system. So that's just a fact, and it's continued to be the Republican policy to try to destroy public schools. Here locally, really, vouchers probably don't come into play that much. We've been lucky we haven't had a charter school be established here for the most part. We have, obviously, St. Pat's, but again, it cannot handle a huge student population. Our problem is that our high schools, we're losing far too many students going to surrounding high schools because the facilities are better. So every time a student leaves to go to a different high school, whether it be South Vermilion, Northview, Sullivan, Riverton Park, Park Heritage, those are thousands and thousands of dollars lost. It ends up being millions of dollars. Just, again, we put a recent thing out about interim superintendent Balatevich talking about how many students had left. It was $3 million in lost revenue for that. I don't know what this school year was, but I'd like to know.
Okay, thank you. We have a number of questions about a potential referendum, so we will ask this question next. Do you believe that the school corporation will be asking the taxpayers for another referendum to fix our high schools? And what would you recommend be done differently so it would pass this time? Ms. Joyner, you're up.
I do believe that it will. It's a conversation that will be put on the table. I had a meeting with Dr. Hemsel. He is definitely in favor of a referendum because we definitely do. We need new schools. Terre Haute North and Terre Haute South are over 50 years old. I'm not in favor of West Vigo schools coming into Terre Haute, so I would be in favor of a third high school as well. Brand new, built from the ground up, but as long as the ask makes sense, like what are we asking the taxpayers to assume in implementing a referendum?
Okay, Mrs. Lohr.
So we know that our operational referendum is coming to a close in 2027, and we are building up cash reserves in order to plan for that going away. So we don't know if that would be renewed or not. And then, of course, there's the other option of an additional capital referendum being put on the table for facilities. The reality is that we need either referendum reform at the state level so that taxpayers are getting a very clear question on the ballot that does not mislead them about what they're voting for, or we need to do something, and I think this is something that I am excited about and want to pursue with Dr. Hemsel and other board members, which is looking at every possible other option to raise funds for this. I personally have been investigating the bill to operate transfer law that's on the books for P3 agreements, anything that could possibly be investigated to look into how can we do what we need to do and give our students and teachers the facilities they need.
Ms. Scott?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Do you believe that the Vigo County School Corporation will be asking the taxpayers for another referendum to fix our high schools? And what would you recommend be done differently so it would actually pass?
I do believe there will be a referendum just because the situation's only gotten worse. We have poured a lot of ESSER funds into the buildings. You remember all of those funds were earmarked and they were very specific for HVAC. It was kind of hard for a lot of people to see putting money into buildings that were literally crumbling, but that was the source of that money and we had to be specific with it. Bringing us forward, we're going to have to find something that the public will come along with the board and the administration to find a way. We can't saddle the farmers, which is what would have happened with the other referendum. But ultimately, it won't be up to this board. The board can put the question on the ballot, but it will be with the community. It will be what the community would approve of. Myself, I would like to see us explore the food and beverage tax.
Okay, Mrs. Killian.
As Mrs. Lohr stated, the operational referendum does sunset in 2027, and that helps pay for our SBOs, transportation, some of the teacher salaries, as well as behavior interventionists. And those are vital needs that we need in our school corporation. So as a community moving forward, please pay attention to those conversations as we move forward, looking at that renewal of that of that referendum. As far as our facilities go, we know what our facilities are like right now, and the only way the state allows us to address large capital projects is under a referendum. We do not get to even control the question. That is set by the state, and those are legislative priorities that we'd like to have more control over that question, so our taxpayers do understand where that's coming from. I have had conversations at the state level of other avenues besides property tax raises to address our referendum language and our facilities in our local communities. Mrs. Lohr is correct. We are looking for other avenues, what we can do.
Mr. Lee.
Again, there's no choice but to have a referendum. We can't continue to pour millions of dollars in the north and south and West Vigo High School. Those schools are finished, but we continue to do it. The Fanning Halley study in 2017 told us what we needed to do with the high schools. Again, we're spending $23 million on new HVAC systems at North, South, and West Vigo High School. If you read that report in 2017, it says we need to replace all the pneumatics. We're pouring all these millions of dollars in the North and South and West Vigo, but we didn't touch the pneumatics, so that means no temperature controls. So areas of North that are cold as heck, other areas are hot as heck, the same as South. I was in South High School's gym 2 weeks ago for a volleyball game. Students and parents had blankets on because the gym was so cold. So these are just conditions you find at West Vigo, at North, at South, so it's just time to step up and do something.
Ms. Christ.
Absolutely, there will be a new referendum. We need new buildings. Everybody knows what the issues are, right? We don't have to sit here and talk about all the issues. We've been doing that. So as far as getting the community's approval for that, a lot of conversation that I have had with individuals within the community is they didn't feel like it was presented well. Right? So that's a common thing that I kept hearing over and over and over. So it's all in how things are presented. If you're asking tax people, or if you're asking the community to pay more tax dollars, they want to know exactly why, how. Okay? So I think maybe some better communication when that next referendum comes out. It's inevitable. We have to have new buildings one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. What do you believe should be the policy regarding nonprofits or small businesses using buildings formerly occupied by the school corporation? Should those organizations or groups or entities be held responsible for the condition of the whole property? And I believe it's up to you, Mrs. Lohr.
I'm sorry, can I ask a point of clarification
Yes.
on that? You said using former buildings?
The formerly occupied buildings
Formerly occupied? Okay.
by the school corporation.
So a building we don't own anymore?
Building, I believe it is a building we do own that we would lease out, perhaps, or we allow others to use.
We don't
Okay.
have buildings that
Okay, we
operate
had a
that
couple
way.
of questions
I mean,
about
we have
this.
nonprofit organizations that rent
Yes,
buildings.
that's what
Is
we're
that
talking, yes,
talking
lease
about?
or rent,
Oh,
yes,
okay,
yes.
Okay, sorry. I
Yes.
didn't mean to be so.
So the concern is, should they also be in charge of the maintenance of those buildings, in addition to not just paying the lease or the rent?
Okay, so we have a wide variety of nonprofit organizations that use our buildings, athletic to all sorts of different kinds. They usually sign an agreement that says that they're providing the payment for custodial staff to be there, and that's my understanding. And if someone has specific questions about that, we'd have to go and look into that with our facilities. But typically, if you're signing that contract and you're paying us for that kind of agreement, you're also paying for custodial staff to be there.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Scott?
Well, my experience has been very similar to what Mrs. Lohr said. I don't know of anybody that's had a question with maintenance. I do know that we try to be open with the community and share the facilities. And I'm going back to many of my boys played basketball, and we practiced often in gyms at different schools. There was so much competition for a gym. There just never was enough place for kids to practice. And then when we would hold tournaments, usually as fundraisers, we supplied the payments to the janitors or anyone that the school corporation had to bring in for overtime. That's been a while, so I'm not sure if it's sports related, if it is the same. But whoever asked that question, it's excellent, but I'm sure it's specific to that particular group.
Mrs. Killian?
Our schools are our community hearts. They are utilized by a wide variety of nonprofits and other organizations, Cub Scouts, dance teams, to have competitions, athletic teams, academic teams. I go back to when my sons were in Scouts, and it was always leave things better than the way you found them. We do have contracts to where the school also, again, that community heart, works with organizations. They're not charging the full price of the contract necessarily because organizations can't pay it. So we're looking at 80%, 90% charging them as we build up so that organization can make those adjustments within. And part of that is to pay for custodial maintenance. Not only should you have that as in our buildings, but as adults, we should come in and keep our places better than we found them. That is just, to me, a human kindness to be given our school facilities to use and utilize, that you keep it clean and maintained.
Mr. Lee?
I think it would depend on the not-for-profit we're talking about. So if this was in reference to the Boys and Girls Club coming to Meadows, I think that was a great thing for the Boys and Girls Club. And I don't know what their lease agreement is, but I know they're investing money into Meadows to make improvements there. So again, without looking at a lease agreement, I don't know who's responsible for the maintenance at the Boys and Girls Club. But again, if you are using a school on a weekend, a Saturday or Sunday, the custodian will be paid time and a half. So if it's not a school-related thing, it's a not-for-profit, then probably they need to be expected to pay for that custodian's time for that weekend event.
Ms. Christ?
First thing that comes to mind, is there's probably a signed document on what they've agreed to do. So I believe that should be upheld. It's already been said, you leave something better than what you found it, right? I love the fact that nonprofits, different organizations are using the schools, right? That just shows even more community support, like that's exactly what community means. So as far as paying, things like that, another thing that comes to mind is if it's not in the contract, then no. If I'm renting a house and it's not mine, there's certain things that the landowner's responsible for. So if it's not in a contract and out there, then the organizations or nonprofits should not be responsible for that. It should be clarified.
Ms. Joyner?
I would like to echo what Christina said, only because if I am renting property, usually the owner is responsible for the maintenance unless it is otherwise stated in the contract.
Okay, thank you. The next question is about alternative schools. There was a concern that when McLean was open, it assisted with keeping our graduation rates up, and the concern is that Booker T is a good program but does not meet the needs of secondary schools. So are you in favor of opening up an alternative school that would meet the needs of our students in Vigo County? And I believe that would be Ms. Scott.
Ms. Scott, you said?
Yes.
The alternative school is a good idea. It keeps a lot of kids in school that would otherwise just drop out. So it's smaller, and it has a situation that is individual to each child. Each child there has a story of why they didn't stay in the regular school that they were in. So we have to pay attention, and I think if there's a slow graduation rate, it's probably because more attention needs to be paid to each child. This is the same problem we have when we have a classroom that's overcrowded. We will see that those scores will go down because there's not enough of the teacher to go around. So I would say that the program needs attention, and that would take some people who actually want to prioritize that. I don't know that giving them a new building or starting a whole new program from scratch would make a difference.
Mrs. Killian?
So during COVID, there was a lot going on with how we were administering learning opportunities for our students. And I am proud of the Vigo County School Corporation to have tried to do the best that they could do with different options. And one of them was our VVSA program that both of my students did attend during that time because we have health concerns in our home. Vigo County, or school corporations in general, they are looked to solve so many community problems laid at their feet. And Vigo County is trying to do that with Booker T. Washington, with VVSA, with our adult education program, along with our pre-K to 12th grade education. We attended the graduation this year. I believe there was 76 students that graduated from Booker T. Washington this year, and that was something to celebrate. We don't know what all these students are going through, and to be a corporation that continues to meet those needs on a day-to-day basis in the programming that we do offer, and to meet these students where they are coming from, that is what we're going to continue to do. We even have teachers that will go and pick up students and bring them to school if attendance is an issue. I am very proud of the work we're doing.
Mr. Lee?
Obviously, the Washington Alternative School does a great job and has for years, but then we created the Vigo Virtual School, which is an alternative school in many ways. But that school was created to generate revenue for the corporation by Dr. Hayworth. When it was first set up, he assured me in the first year it would make $300,000 for the school corporation, and every year after that we would generate $3 million in revenue with the virtual school. I don't believe we've ever come close to that. I know Dr. Balatevich had suggested adding more seats to the virtual school, and I don't know if the board followed through on that or not. So,
Ms. Christ?
I believe that Booker T is doing the best that they can. I think that when McLean was closed, we lost some students. I do believe that there was great value in the McLean School. So without knowing the finances and things like that, not involved in that decision of closing and all of that, you know, just as a community member sitting here right now, looking in, I am in favor of alternative schools. I don't know what that looks like budget-wise or anything like that, but I know what works for me may not work for you. So passing that along with kids, we need to have options for all of our children. We need to be more inclusive. Some people learn at a different rate. They learn differently, and different teachers can get to them. So I know some students that went to McLean and graduated and are successful human beings today.
Ms. Joyner?
So I grew up across the street from the original Booker T on 13th and Cruft, so I am definitely in favor of alternative school. I just think it needs a little TLC. It needs someone over the program that cares, so that those students can excel. I believe like mothers go there with their children. I don't remember if the kids are still able to attend, but we definitely need to keep alternative schools.
Okay, Mrs. Lohr.
I think one of my favorite days as a school board member is attending the Booker T. Washington graduation ceremony. The stories of those students will get you every single time. And watching the moms come across the stage with their babies and their families that are supporting them through that time in their life is absolutely priceless. And I want to commend the leadership that we have there at Booker T. for doing everything they can for students. They ask us for more space. They do tremendous work with those kids. And we also do the Vigo Virtual School, which is, again, options, options, options. I said before, we have to be competitive in the environment we're in. If we're not providing options, if we're not being innovative, and we're not working with students at whatever needs they have, then we're not going to be competitive. And so I think that could include everything from, examining what we're doing at Booker T to embracing what like IPS has done, where the charter schools are actually part of their school corporation and the innovation is kept within the bounds and stabilizes the funding.
Okay, we're going to shake this up and do a 30-second response to get to a few more specific questions. So, Mrs. Killian, it's going to start with you. Would you commit, if elected, to try to reopen the daycare at Terre Haute South, and if there's room, one at Terre Haute North?
At this time, we are a public education institution, pre-K through 12th. I'm not saying that daycare is not important, because it is. The nation is suffering a daycare shortage, which affects our students, which affects our parents, which affects our families and our community. At this time, we are charged with taxpayer dollars, and to make most use out of that funding for what we are governed to do, which is pre-K through 12th grade. It's not a heartless thing saying we can't sustain a daycare program, but we are helping those community members that do.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, I would advocate for reopening the daycare at South High School, at West Vigo High School, adding one to North High School, and perhaps adding others. We have a serious shortage of daycare here. The cost of daycare is obviously extravagant, with perhaps 8% of your total income going just for daycare. It may be higher than that in certain areas in Terre Haute. So again, I think we're in that business. It would help teachers tremendously to have daycare available to them at those schools.
All right, Mrs. Christ?
Without knowing what the cost of that is, in a perfect world, yes. I would love to say absolutely yes. I am 100% for that, but I am not sure budget-wise what that looks like and what that would take away from something else. We've already been talking about budget-wise, like what would we cut, what would we take away, and then now we're talking about adding something back into that. Once again, in a perfect world, that would make great sense to have a daycare in each one and be able to support everyone, right? But without knowing the finances, I can't really say 100%.
Ms. Joyner?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Will you commit, if elected, to try to reopen the daycare at Terre Haute South, and if there's room, one at Terre Haute North?
Okay, so I am not familiar with there being a daycare at Terre Haute South or North, but I do know that there is a daycare shortage, so I would definitely be in favor of it.
Okay. Mrs. Lohr?
So first and foremost, we have to spend our money on the education piece, the pre-K through 12. But I would be definitely interested in discussing a benefit to our staff that would allow them to invest in the community and the businesses that exist, and maybe working with the other taxing entities that we have to create maybe like a rotating loan fund for those to keep those businesses going, or maybe to grow them, so that we're doing that instead of housing it in shop.
Okay. Ms. Scott?
Well, if I heard the question right, the person's asking, would you commit to try? Well, definitely, I would try. I think we've already hit on teacher morale. The lost generation of teachers suffering that has been terrible, that they now are paid after years of experience at the same rate as a new teacher. So anything that we can that says to our teachers, you're important to us, we care about you, we should try to do it. And definitely the convenience of them being able to have in-house daycare. We should explore that.
Okay. Thank you. Regarding those kiddos with special needs, how can our school corporation ensure that these often overlooked students can be highly functioning and productive members of humanity? And this is going to Mr. Lee.
I think our special education staff or special needs staff do an excellent job, and it's rewarding to see how fellow students within that school treat special needs students. I mean, they just become part of the school. It's a family. So I think we do a great job in working with special needs children of varying degrees.
Okay, Ms. Christ?
Could you please repeat that?
Yes. Regarding those kids with special needs, how can our school corporation ensure that these often overlooked students can be highly functioning and productive members of humanity?
Okay. I kind of agree with Mark. I haven't personally heard of any situation where a child of special needs has been mistreated. I actually had a niece that grew up through Vigo County School Corporation as special needs, and I can tell you that Riley Grade School took excellent care of my niece, Kara. And so I think it's very important. If there is an issue, I would like to hear what that issue is, and maybe making sure that we have the staffing in the proper places to ensure for that children.
Okay, Ms. Joyner?
So last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, there was an article in the paper where a teacher had grabbed a special needs student, and if you're an autistic child or a parent, my niece has an autistic child, she has to, use force. So maybe communicating with the parent on how to, I'm using the wrong words, but bring them back down, maybe get some better sensory playgrounds for them to play in.
All right, Mrs. Lohr?
I think the best answer to this is adequate staffing and adequate pay for that staff. We have a lot of education assistants working in our special needs rooms, and we are missing a lot of those education assistants. I know that in one of our functional kindergarten rooms, there were students who were, acting out according to their IEPs and things that were in place for them, and the teacher just didn't have enough help. And so that's something that the board can work on through the administration.
All right, Ms. Scott?
Well, we definitely need to address staffing, and that's easier said than done. We talk about teacher shortages. Special ed is usually the highest shortage, and it's all over the state. It's been happening for a long time. 25 years ago, we were saying, we need special ed teachers, but we really didn't address that, and now it's at a crisis situation. Some of you may remember I went to bat for a couple of our special ed classrooms, and those situations were due to such a small square footage for the amount of children. So again, having a level playing field will benefit.
Okay, Mrs. Killian?
I served as an educational assistant at Rio Grande Elementary School, and I did help work in some of the functional classrooms. And first and foremost, those teachers that serve those students every day have a heart for those students and love them as their own. I agree that it's mostly a staffing issue at times. I will share that I've talked to some parents right now that had students graduate last year entering the special education field. So that's hope. We have hope there that there are people still wanting to serve these students and to bring the light into their world that they need. They absolutely have a place in our corporation, and we will continue to work to bring teachers to our corporation for that.
Okay. Many school corporations in Indiana and across the country have anti-racism policies to set expectations for behaviors of students and staff. The Vigo County School Corporation does not have such a policy. Would you advocate for such a policy here? And Ms. Christ, you're up.
I absolutely would, and I would advocate for a zero tolerance policy.
Okay, Ms. Joyner?
I absolutely would, and I have, and we have asked them to rewrite the policy, and it's went for a fourth reading. It still has not. So we need them to specifically say that it's anti-Black, it's hate speech, it's technically not harassment. I mean, it's harassment, but it's not harassment. To me, harassment leaves a lot up to interpretation. the person that's being harassed, some might say they liked it. So I would like for them to define the behavior.
Mrs. Lohr?
I'm in favor of a not ideologically based policy that is pro-human and inclusive of all students.
Ms. Scott?
Oh, I think you definitely need something that's anti-racism. It's sad to say that, but all we have to do is look at what happened at West Vigo. And the light was shined on that. It's not that that didn't happen at North and that it doesn't happen at South. I spend a lot of time trying to purposely stay connected with kids. I talk to white kids, black kids, Asian kids. I talk to their parents. I talk to foreign exchange students. I seek out people to try to figure out a way to do this better because we're failing these kids. It's terrible, the things that they have to endure just to get through 4 years of high school. Really is not fair.
Okay. Mrs. Killian?
I completely understand the need for anti-racism language and the way in which that our attorneys and our state legislature will allow us to put that language into our policies moving forward. This has been talked about. This is an ongoing issue. It is not being overlooked. We just want to be sure that all students are represented, and we want to make sure that we have the correct anti-racism language that we do need in our policies.
Mr. Lee?
Certainly, I believe we need to protect the civil rights of all students, no matter race, gender, religion. So again, we need to do that. Again, the language I would support if so.
Okay, we're going to do 45 seconds to get one more question in. Thank you, everyone, for that laugh. What do you see, and we'll do a big picture question, as the major issues facing this school corporation? And Ms. Joyner.
The major issue would be...
Major issues, yeah.
Major issue, but
Yeah.
in 45 seconds, issues,
Yep.
okay.
To do all things.
Well, like I said, my campaign is deeply rooted in diversity, so racism would be one for me. Getting the corporation and the administration and board to support us and make policies that prohibit and develop professional development that will help help teachers get rid of their biases, that way that they can recognize them when they arise.
Mrs. Lohr?
So top of mind is facilities. We have to continue to follow up and be diligent about that. Pay for teachers, correcting the middle ground there so that everyone is getting what they should be getting, and continuing to work with all of our employee groups to make sure that it's not just teachers that we address. And biggest and most important is community trust. I think that we have to be seen to be making 5 million tiny little right decisions in order for that to be rebuilt, and that starts with our teachers.
Ms. Scott?
Well, here again, I don't know what could rise to the top because there are so many things that are equally disturbing going on. But facilities is huge. We just can no longer sit here and let these children think that they don't matter. Because when you go to school in a building that is so poorly kept, I don't know how board members or administrators or taxpayers say, we love our children, they're number one, and then send them to school in these buildings. So there, like I said, there are so many things that would rise to the top, but that is huge.
Mrs. Killian?
As I stated earlier, I think community involvement, community trust, building on this relationship that we have as a school corporation to best serve our students first, as well as our teachers and our staff and our community. In ways in doing that, of course, is with teacher pay. Mrs. Lohr did touch on all of our staff. We have several bargaining groups. We have several individual groups within our corporation that we must pay. But we also be mindful of state law that does come through, and we need to make those changes. You know, in 2011, when bargaining laws did change, we did not make those those changes as a corporation needed to address our teacher pay, and that's what helped create this generational gap of the lost generation. So we have to be mindful and vigilant at that state law as it comes down, that we as a corporation do address that. Our facilities are huge. We have to continue to do that work on our facilities as well.
Mr. Lee.
I think it's not just the facilities, it's the personnel that goes along with the facilities. We don't have enough full-time custodians. We have over 30 buildings. We have 2 electricians to serve 30 buildings. We have 2 plumbers to serve 30 buildings. We have 1 painter. We just, recently, it was just posted a new job. It's going to be called tradesman, and if you read the job description, this person's expected to do like 20 different positions. He's supposed to be a carpenter, he's supposed to be able to do carpeting, tile, plumbing, electrical, light-duty demolition, be able to drive a van, be able to drive a truck, be able to drive a forklift. So this is just one position to try to do 20 positions instead of hiring the people we need.
Ms. Christ, if we could just settle down a little bit. Ms. Christ?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What do you see as the major issues facing the school corporation?
There are several, and we've talked about them all tonight. So I would probably say for me in the next 45 seconds, number one would be the relationship between the school corporation and the community. I think before any real change is going to happen within our community and school corporation, that has to be fixed. Secondly, the well-being of our teachers along with our students. My platform is, number one, mental health. Everything that goes along within the school corporation, it is always going to fall down to make sure that everybody is okay. All right, and it's going to come down to their mental health. We need to ensure that our teachers, our staff, and our students are okay on every level.
Okay, now is the time for concluding remarks. We're going to work our way backwards this time. So, Mr. Lee, you have 30 seconds for concluding remarks.
Again, as I said, I have a lot of experience with the corporation. I bargained over 25 contracts. I know the everyday operations of the school corporation. I think I would be one of the more informed board members that's been on the board in a long time. So I would very much appreciate your support and your vote. And again, thank you for being here this evening.
Mrs. Killian?
I just want to say that experience does come with me as well for your vote for the school corporation. I am serving as a board member right now, and I do understand the role. We are not involved in the day-to-day operations. We are to hire the superintendent to do that work for us, and we hold that person accountable for that work. I will continue to do that and be vigilant with our superintendent, as well as listen to our community and the needs we need moving forward to keep kids first in mind. I'm very engaged in the role as a board member. I love this work. I'm serving at the state level as well. I'm very mindful of the work we need to do moving forward.
Ms. Scott?
Well, everything that has been said has a lot of truth in it tonight from every candidate. But the board often says they are a policy-making board. Previous boards have said this too. And you can't make policy without becoming involved at some level. You have to know the day-to-day. You have to know what it's like for a teacher. You have to know what it's like for a special ed teacher that has to put part of her class in a storage room because her school's been overcrowded. So we have to stay connected. That's the only way to go forward.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Lohr?
I'd just like to say I'm a proud product of the Vigo County School Corporation. My husband is. Public education set us up as poor people for a lifetime of success. We were able to translate that into stability for our children, and we want to see that continue for our entire community, every single student. That is first and foremost, and I think we do that by being good board members and being responsive to the community. I had a great conversation with a parent today, and we'll keep doing that.
Ms. Joyner?
Hold on. Okay, so as a parent sitting on the opposite side of the board going to these meetings, I never felt like I was heard. I wasn't given enough time to state my case, so I just need for, I'm sorry, I can't do this, hold on. Can I go after her?
You can maybe,
I can go.
you have 4 seconds. You can perhaps talk with folks afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Christ?
So I believe in the past 11 years, I have shown the community that I have great passion for our community. I believe that I have shown that I am very community-minded. I believe that I am the person for the seat for District 1, one of them. I do have a great love for our students. I have been going in there for the last 8 years, and damn it, that's...
Can I get my 4 seconds back?
Okay, we're going to give Ms. Joyner her 4 seconds.
You gonna set your clock for 4 seconds?
Ready, set,
So I promise to be transparent, accountable to the community. Thank you.
thank you. We want to thank, on behalf of our co-sponsors, thank you to the candidates. Thank you to our public safety officer for coming tonight. Thank you. Thank you to our tech team here at the library, and thank you to all of you. Have a nice evening. There's another debate tonight.